On the fuel duty, which has been talked about, of course, you never know whether that will be done. The interesting thing about it is that fuel duty hasn't gone up for the last 12 years. If we had raised fuel duty in line with inflation as we had done until then, we would have been collecting about 8 billion more per annum by now. But as it is, the idea of perhaps cutting 5p of that duty, which is about 57.6 pence for every gallon of petrol you put in, would make a difference, but not a huge one. The interesting thing for the government is that, of course, because of the price being so high right now in petrol, they also get 20% VAT, which means that their pockets are lining up anyway from the higher cost because, of course, they get much more in terms of cash because of that. So they can be generous in that way. On the national insurance one, I think, yes, the pressure is or has been on to delay it by a year, but I think the most likely thing we're going to see happen is that indeed the thresholds for when you start paying that national insurance contribution will be raised, which means therefore that you leave out quite a lot of people who would have been paying extra national insurance contributions, which is of course now aimed for the National Health Service and for social care over a period of time.
That's an interesting point there, because of course the Chancellor has for the last few months been very focused on making sure that his interventions are targeted. When the Labour Party called for cutting VAT on fuel bills, the Chancellor said that would be giving handouts to millionaires, and instead he wanted to do targeted support for the bottom 80% of households. It seems like that idea when it comes to raising threshold for national insurance payment, or indeed maybe targeted support for people on fuel or anything else, is this Chancellor's worldview really to do more targeted behaviour rather than broad brush tax cuts?
We've seen that more targeted behaviour, of course, when it comes to easing the fuel bills for people. So it's people who live in households who live in houses that are lower in terms of the rateable value, which are going to be getting some of the extra benefits. So by comparison to what everyone will be getting, there's extra support now being targeted for those at the lower end. So that's certainly happening. So this 9 billion that will be costing the government to support households' energy bills is really targeted mostly to those who can least afford to pay. So that's good news. It's interesting about cars and fuel duty, because the reality is that as you go down the pay scale, a larger percentage of what you spend is on food and transport, fuel, really. So there is, again, an element of targeting to that, but of course it's going to affect everybody without any doubt. But I think there is an element of targeting that's hinted in that, if you like. But probably he will need to do an awful lot more, I'm afraid. Particularly, I think he's going to have to look at benefits. You talk about targeting. Benefits are going up by just 3.1% because the inflation that they counted it on was lower when they did so. If he were to raise that, people are saying, why not 6%? It's going to be quite expensive. Like what you're doing with the minimum wage, which is going up by 6.6% in April.